It's Indiana in the Morning, as always, presented by First Commonwealth Bank here on AM 1160 WCCS and 101.1 FM. So in December, every time I look at my TV screen and it's on ESPN, I see something along the bottom of the screen, and it's a crawl, and it's something about George Karl and his new book, and people getting all angry about it. Coach, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How's everything in Pennsylvania?
Oh, it's wonderful here. It's raining and cold. And I'm sure you remember that. The book is Furious George, My 40 Years Surviving NBA Divas, Clueless GMs, and Poor Shot Selection. And what a wonderful, fun read it is. Coach, I got to tell you, you went to my favorite school, North Carolina, and my favorite coach, my high school basketball coach, was a legend around here, always talked about how much he loved and he knew Dean Smith. Dean Smith was such a key part of your life and still is in your philosophies and everything, and that really comes through in your book.
No, I mean, I laugh all the time when I say that the best decision I ever made was choosing North Carolina over Maryland and Duke, and because I was very close to going to both Maryland and Duke, and one weekend I was just thinking about it, and I said, I'm going to North Carolina, and I'm glad. I mean, as I said, the influences of Coach Smith, the fraternity of the Carolina tradition, and I just think the coaching tree that comes from learning the game of basketball with his tutelage and his mentoring.
You know, it's funny because we think of your coaching style, and we think of Coach Smith. We might be tempted to say they're not really very similar in terms of coaching philosophy. But then when you read the book, and particularly, I have to tell you, I loved the sections where you got into the nuts and the bolts of coaching, particularly defensive coaching. The apple really didn't fall far from that tree, did it?
No, I think basketball, Coach Smith taught, play hard, play defense, and play as a team, and get smarter every day was the themes of every practice. And he had great winning seasons, but he built the game of basketball on a bunch of fundamentals that were taught at a high level. And defense is the game of basketball is the key to winning championships. Is you got to be a better defensive team than probably you are offensively.
Speaking of what you talk about in the book having to do with offensive basketball, defensive basketball, and your philosophy in both of those areas, you make the point that you're really a defensive guy. You love coaching defense. What is it about defense that you think is so important to the game of basketball?
Well, I think the most intimidating thing in the game of basketball is not being able to score. When you can't score, you get frustrated. When you can't score, the team falls apart a little bit. And I remember just in the 1996 finals against Chicago, both teams were very good offensive basketball teams, but it was a defensive series. I mean, it was just totally and completely a defensive series. I think Michael got off one game on us where he had a really big game, but we controlled him most of the game. We controlled their offense a lot. We just couldn't score against them. Their defense was unbelievably good.
Yeah, you have a great chapter called How to Beat Michael Jordan, North Carolina guy, and you talk about that North Carolina fraternity. And I know that you've had a lot of time when you've had to answer questions about the criticisms of the book, but I love when you talk about North Carolina basketball, and the stories are great. They're hilarious, and I love when you write about the Doug Moe Invitational. And not only Michael Jordan's golf game, but all those other guys. When you get together at an event such as that, it has to be just a riot.
It was a tremendous event. We actually still do it. Coach Smith's not there. Coach Guthrie, they all started it, but it still happens in Pinehurst sometime in the end of August, early September. And usually between 15 and 20 really primetime college coaches and North Carolina coaches and friends of the game of basketball get together and gamble a little bit on the courses of Pinehurst. It's really a fun 3 or 4 days.
George Karl is our guest, of course, Penn Hills native, legendary NBA coach. The book is Furious George, My 40 Years Surviving NBA Divas, Clueless GMs, and Poor Shot Selection. Coach, I mentioned a couple of moments ago the people reacting to the book and you having to react to them. And that's been covered by so many people, and Brian Kilmeade, as a matter of fact, talking with you the other day about that sort of controversy. I want to talk about something else, and how moving it is when you write about getting cancer and the treatments and how that changed your life. Could you spend a few moments telling us about the diagnosis, the treatment, and what it means to you now to have had gone through that particular ordeal?
Oh, cancer, when you hear the word cancer, you're scared to death. I think we're doing a great job in the cancer world of finding treatments and living with cancer. Basically, we haven't. I hope and I think it will happen soon. I think hopefully they can find cures for cancer, or vaccines for cancer, or ways to eliminate cancer. I think we're getting closer there. But from my standpoint, the patient, any patient, including me, I mean, you get worried very quickly. And I've had 3 cancers in my life. I've had 2 of my own, and my son had cancer. So we're a cancer family. We understand how the journey needs a lot of support. And once you have cancer, you're always basically a cancer patient because your odds of getting a reoccurrence is a lot higher than after you have one. You sometimes get 2, sometimes you get 3. And so you're trying to figure out your body all the time. But I think the big part of cancer is mental. It shakes you. And so after you go through the treatment or you have your operations, you kind of have to rebuild yourself a little bit. And in that moments of cancer, I realized that I had cheated my family a little bit more than I thought I did. And I realized that I was probably worrying about winning the basketball game more than I was worrying about life. And I think that's where I've changed. I think you see me now, I've gone to a more balanced life. I try to stay away from the stress of an NBA season. And I try to always give time, not only to my family, but to myself.
I'm thinking that probably comes right back around to Coach Smith, too, because I know that you could draw inspiration from the examples he set in his lifetime.
Well, Coach Smith was a man that kind of wanted you to be well-rounded. He never, ever, I don't think he ever thought about pro basketball as much as I want my players to get their degree and have a passion and have a future and have a direction. And I've said this many times, and Coach Smith is a great coach, but he's a better coach of men and better coach of life than he is of basketball. And I think that's where I think the difference was. I think very early in your time with Coach Smith, you realize he cares about who you are, where you're going, and how can he make that better and make you a strong, good person through the process. And the love that he showed on a daily basis was amazing. And I think that's why the fraternity of Carolina basketball is so close.
Just a couple of moments left with George Karl. The book is Furious George, My 40 Years Surviving NBA Divas, Clueless GMs, and Poor Shot Selection. One more question, Coach. It has to do with something that you turned down. You turned down the opportunity to become the head coach of the University of Pittsburgh, the Pitt Panthers. Have you ever thought in that time about what it would have been like to become a college basketball coach in your hometown?
Still do. Still do. I think this year I've actually gone and spent some time with college coaches just to see how the college game is run and how practices and learn about, what the good stuff is and what the tough stuff is and what the difficult stuff is. So I've been studying the game, and actually there was 2 situations. The Pittsburgh job came up at one time, and also early in my career, Coach Guthridge had the Penn State job, and I was going to be his assistant at Penn State. And I think it was the early 70s. And Coach Guthridge got to Pittsburgh, and he was supposed to get a plane to go to College Park, and he got cold feet. And he went back to Chapel Hill. And, of course, then Penn State hired Dick Harder. And so I was very close to being in Pennsylvania. My basketball career could be totally different if I went college or went to Penn State or took the University of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But I'm blessed to have a great career with the NBA. I love the NBA. I love college, but I love the NBA more.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, thanks so much for spending some time with us. We do so appreciate it. Furious George, the name of the book. George Karl has been with us. Have a wonderful day today, Coach.
Same back at you. Take care of Western Pennsylvania. It's always a great place to be from.